Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight, right here on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, you are being gaslit by the mainstream media in this country. The Pakistani rape gang scandal is being denied yet again right before our eyes in real time. Watch this.
And the Shadow Justice Secretary suggested that these crimes are from predominantly British Pakistani men. According to your data, that's not true.
That's not true, yeah. And we can only go with the data because that's obviously presenting the evidence base for us.
And it's not only the BBC. Former BBC journalists turned left-wing activists are also doing the same. Watch this.
I'm telling you that you are focusing on Pakistani grooming gangs because probably you're racist and you don't believe that there are white perpetrators of the same crime.
Let me be really clear about this, because lots of people in our mainstream media appear to be unable to be really clear about this. The rape gang scandal is absolutely a Pakistani-related problem in this country. The data presented on BBC Newsnight that showed Pakistanis make up only 12% of rape gang suspects is misleading for a number of reasons. Firstly, it only represents suspects in 2024, just 1 year. But we know this phenomenon goes back decades, as far back as the 1980s. Secondly, less than a third of those suspects actually had their ethnicity recorded, so this data is wildly incomplete. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly of all, it seems that our media class willfully misunderstand the idea of disproportionality. The UK is, at least for now, a white majority country. Roughly 80% of us are white. Meanwhile, Pakistanis make up only 2.7% of this country. In other words, even if this data is correct, it is clear that white people are disproportionately underrepresented in the rape gang scandal, while Pakistani Muslims are hugely overrepresented in this scandal. But there's even more than this, as GB News reporter Charlie Peters has been showing for some time. A Home Office report into this very question revealed that in spite of this attempt to make it appear like a predominantly white problem, it revealed less than 30% of rape gang abusers were white, while 28% were Asian, despite making up only 9% underrepresented in the rape gang scandal, while Pakistani Muslims are hugely overrepresented in this scandal. But there's even more than this, as GB News reporter Charlie Peters has been showing for some time. A Home Office report into this very question revealed that in spite of this attempt to make it appear like a predominantly white problem, it revealed less than 30% of rape gang abusers were white, while 28% were Asian, despite making up only 9% of the population. Pakistani Muslims were significantly overrepresented among rape gang perpetrators. In 2015, a report by Louise Casey likewise concluded that child sexual exploitation, and I quote, concerned a majority of white female adolescent or teenage victims and a majority of Pakistani heritage adult male perpetrators. Professor Alexis Jay, in her report in 2014, likewise concluded that most perpetrators of organised grooming, and I quote again, were of Pakistani heritage. Police in Rochdale identified the men convicted at a trial as being, and I quote, mainly British Pakistani, and as Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has pointed out today in another report that looked into historic rape gangs, 83% of all abusers were of Islamic heritage, the majority of whom being Pakistani. Perhaps most damning of all, though, the report found, by comparing the number of prosecutions to the overall population, that 1 in every 2,200 Muslim men over the age of 16 in England and Wales had been prosecuted for this crime between 1997 and 2017. And when it came to Pakistanis, it was 1 in every 1,700. In Rochdale, it was 1 in every 280 Muslim males over the age of 16 were prosecuted for this crime. 1 in every 280. In Telford, it was 1 in every 126. In Rotherham, it was 1 in every 73. Now, look, if you read the testimonies at the court cases from victims themselves, they will also say that one of the reasons they were targeted was precisely because they were white, vulnerable girls, and they were non-Muslim. This is the greatest scandal in modern British history, and the establishment wants to pretend it didn't happen. And do you know why? Because it shatters the myth of multiculturalism that they've been pushing onto us for the best part of 3 decades, a myth that says minorities are virtuous and can do no wrong, and it is the majority that is problematic. But actually, the rape gang scandal turns that completely on its head. So I'm saying to legacy media tonight, stop gaslighting the British people. Be open and honest about the scale of this problem. Let's get that national inquiry and let's get the truth as to what happened to these girls and women, and let's get them the justice they deserve. As ever, let me know your views, gbnews.com/your say. Of course, you can reach us on X @GBNews. Well, I'm joined now to debate this by David Greenwood, the lawyer who represented a number of Rotherham abuse scandal survivors. David, thank you for your time this evening. We know you're extremely busy. Look, what is going on in the mainstream media here? Because when I listen to some of these shows, BBC Newsnight, the Newsagent podcast, there seems to be a concerted attempt to misrepresent the true cause of this crisis, the fact that Pakistani Muslims are consistently overrepresented among the men, I say men, but among those who are arrested and convicted for this hideous crime. What's going on?
Well, I'm just a lawyer working for the women affected here. I'm interested in preventing child sexual abuse long term. It's happening now. I want it to stop. I'm really perturbed by the fact that this conversation is happening, that this debate is happening in the media, at GB News. For me, the issue of ethnicity is totally irrelevant. These are criminals. They should be viewed that way. The police should be viewing all perpetrators of child sexual abuse as criminals.
David, just to push back on you a little bit here, because you say ethnicity is irrelevant. Let's just get some stuff on the table here. The evidence, as I've said, is pretty clear, and I would argue that much of that is because within these minority communities, Pakistani Muslim communities, we have a clan-based system. We have cultural practices that have been imported into this country that are completely opposite to British ways of life, to the British rule of law. Yes, of course, these men are criminals, but there is something cultural behind this specific crime, behind the rape gang scandal. And if you say ethnicity is irrelevant, or maybe you say religion is irrelevant, you stop us from getting to the true root cause of this crisis and what is really going on.
Well, that's for sociologists to debate. If there are ways of getting into those cultural aspects of all this, that's fine. I'm looking at it from a prevention situation, and I want the police to do more to stop child sexual abuse in all its forms.
And do you think there should be a national inquiry, David?
If it's church abuse, if it's in the Scouts, if it's at schools, I want it to stop. If it's on the streets,
do you think on that basis there should be a national statutory inquiry? Do you think Keir Starmer should try and commit to a dedicated inquiry to get all of the facts, all of the evidence, all of the people who are in those institutions, the social workers, the police officers, the local politicians who turned a blind eye? Do you not think it's time, given your extensive experience, you've worked with the victims of this crisis, you've seen the cases, don't we need to have a national reckoning with this scandal?
To a certain degree, there needs to be a reckoning. I think a national inquiry on a scale that's envisaged by some commentators is a waste of time and money. I support a series of local inquiries directed at working out exactly who was responsible in different areas for not tackling the problem earlier, feeding that back into a central body that can advise police and local authorities and other agencies to do better in future.
Yeah. Well, David Greenwood, we're just having a slight issue with the noise down the line, but thank you for joining us. I'm also joined in the studio by Adam Wren, Director of Open Justice. Adam, David, basically they're saying local inquiries would be the way forward, doesn't really see why ethnicity is relevant, not really convinced that cultural factors are relevant. This is just straight down the line criminality. At the same time, we've got these pretty big journalists with big platforms out there. Even today, months on from Elon Musk actually highlighting this issue, months on from the public, again, reading those horrific transcripts from the court cases, saying this isn't actually to do with Pakistani Muslims. What's your view here?
I think that race is central to the issue because the reason that this was allowed to happen is because the police were uncomfortable to police these people because of their race, because they were seen as being called racist. We know this from multiple reports, been stated multiple times, and the police themselves have come out and said, you know, we hold up our hands, this happened, and we've had lessons learned. And then you'll have a police officer on Newsnight talking out of both sides of their mouth. They're saying that they've learned the lessons, and then we'll get on TV.
But that interview that we showed earlier on from BBC Newsnight with that police officer, I thought that was outrageous given the data that she was referring to. It's very incomplete.
Right.
It's 1 year. You don't get that comprehensive picture. And let me just say what other people won't say. I just think we have a media class in this country that is desperate to find anything at all which suggests that this is a crisis being driven by any group other than Pakistani Muslims. I think we saw that with the Emily Maitlis interview with Rupert Lowe, calling Rupert Lowe a racist, I should say, for even raising this issue. We've seen that BBC Newsnight clip. We've got the reports of local inquiries showing that local councillors ignored this issue precisely, as you say, because they were worried about being called racist. This seems to be verging on a cover-up.
Right. I think it's terrible to deny. And I think it's especially terrible to deny on a panel in front of survivors of these gangs. All of the girls on that panel were survivors of Pakistani gangs.
Wow.
And they chose this, so, you know, this situation to roll that denial out, and I thought it was despicable.
I mean, I remember the BBC even having a documentary about the rape gang scandal, and until this year, the main documentary was about a white working class girl who had lied about being abused by a grooming gang. There is something wrong among the ruling elite in this country, including parts of the media. There is just something fundamentally off with that group. They just seem unable to speak openly and honestly about what's going on.
It makes them very uncomfortable, but we're not uncomfortable using police data in other ways. Like, we know that men are vastly more criminal than women, especially in violent and sexual crimes. We know that young men are vastly more criminal than older men. Why do we stop there? The police are completely fine using that kind of data. Why do we get uncomfortable when it comes to admitting that certain ethnicities commit certain types of crimes more than others?
I mean, yeah, the flip side of that is also, you know, say the Me Too movement, watching, you know, Jess Phillips and Stella Creasy talk about every form of misogyny and sexual abuse and exploitation except this issue. I mean, this issue was not thrust into the forefront of British politics, really, until once again Elon Musk forced the establishment to actually take notice. And the fact of the matter is, had the journalist class in this country been doing their job in legacy media, we wouldn't have needed Elon Musk to actually highlight the issue again.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, the real galling thing about that data for me is you will know this actually better than probably anybody in the country because you post and discuss polling data a lot. Journalists have a responsibility to make sure that their sources are valid and viable and reliable. When you're discussing polling data, you try and use companies that are National Polling Council registered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Police data hasn't been designated national official statistics data since 2014. The ONS stripped that designation from them because their data collection reliability is so bad that the government doesn't even rely on the data that they're collecting. They don't use it.
I mean, it's crazy. You know, we hear all this stuff from the expert class. Trust us. We've got evidence. We've got information. But at the same time, they don't make that information available to taxpayers. And then they accuse taxpayers of misinformation. They say, well, you're misinformed if you raise questions about these issues while not giving them the information. I don't know. Just lastly, I still think, I mean, I know I talk about this issue quite a bit on this show because I feel very strongly about it. The fact we still do not have a dedicated national statutory inquiry in this country into the mass rape of our children, I think is absolutely outrageous. What is the best way forward, Adam, to getting to the bottom of this?
We don't even have an official definition of grooming gang. The Conservatives tried to introduce an amendment into the Police and Crime Bill, and it was voted down in committee. The way forward, I think, is to pressure your MPs. I think the best way is for people at home to email them and tell them they're upset, tell them how you feel about the problem, because MPs do listen to these emails, they do respond to them, their staffers will say we're getting a huge volume of people, they really care about this issue.
Yeah.
And we've already seen a number of Labour defections. I think we can pressure them into more.
Well, Adam, thank you. And indeed, we will also keep talking about this issue until we get the truth and justice those girls and women and their families deserve. Now, after the break, we're going to be looking at how many signatures a new petition